go ahead, call the meeting of July 15th, 2014 of the Air Pollution Control Board to order and ask for a roll call.
Board Member Bennett?
Here.
Board Member Foy? Board Member Long? Board Member Morgan? Board Member Parks?
Here.
Board Member Levitt?
Here.
Board Member Sharkey? Board Member Tucker?
Present.
Board Member Zaragoza?
Here.
And Board Member Pollock?
Present.
Okay. Our new auditor controller, who's no longer acting, would you like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And let the record note that Mayor or Councilmember Morgan has arrived. Out of breath. Let's ask him some questions.
I gotta tell you, you got a level F. It's an intersection over here. Halfway through two stoplights, that's F. Halfway through two stoplights. Pardon?
Yeah, it's worse now than it is in the morning.
Oh, it's terrible. It's a city, not the...
Yes, City of Ventura. Thank you. Good
If you make
point.
two right turns off that, though, you could take your traffic down pretty quick.
Our next item on the agenda is the minutes of the meeting of June 24th. Is there a motion? Motion, second. Any objection or abstentions? Not seeing any. We'll deem that then unanimously approved. Let's now go to public comments. It's an opportunity for the public to comment. Are there any members of the public who wish to comment on anything that's not on the agenda? Not seeing any public comment cards. I'll go then to item 7, which is our board comments. Members of the board have any comments that they would like to share? Seeing none?
I'd like just one. Mike, do you know when our next meeting is, the county thing, of our county group? Okay.
I know it's in September.
And you're requesting to know when the next meeting of which is?
Of the county quality board group, Tri-County.
Oh,
And we
okay.
have meeting once a...
I'll email you this afternoon.
Huh?
I'll email you this afternoon.
Okay.
Okay, we'll get you those dates because you have to attend, right? Mm-hmm. All right, then our next item on the agenda is consent agenda item 9. And that is the recommendation to approve Robert Kamen for the professional engineer position.
I think it's Carmen, was it not?
Carmen. Mm-hmm.
I would know. I'd move that item.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second, and this was already unanimously approved by the standing committee, too, as a recommendation. Any objections to the motion? Seeing none, then that is also approved unanimously. We'll now go to item number 10. Pardon me. Oh, are there any changes to the agenda anyone wants to make? Not seeing any. The agenda will stand. Thank you for reminding me of that. Item 10 then, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Villegas.
Chair Parks, members of the board, I'm Mike Villegas, Air Pollution Control Officer. As your board is aware, it's quite likely that we will see a proposal for a new gas turbine type power plant in Ventura County in the near future. This means the district's engineering division will need to process what's called a prevention of significant deterioration type permit for this facility. In addition, our staff would be required to work with the California Energy Commission staff to analyze what's called a determination of compliance review. I'd like to point out that we have neither the expertise, as we've never done one of these type of permits before, nor the staff resources to implement this at this time in Ventura County. Given the lack of permit resources here in Ventura County, what we included in the fiscal year 2014-15 budget was funds allocated to hire a contractor to complete this permitting action. Revenue to fund this permitting action would come from the district's existing permit processing fees for the power plant application. We're recommending staff of the San Joaquin Valley Unified Air Pollution Control District for two reasons. First, they've done this type of work for similar power plants in their jurisdiction. And second, they've done this type of work for another medium-sized district, the Yolo Solano Air Quality Management District, which is another medium district just like Ventura County. District staff working with the San Joaquin staff have drafted the terms of a working arrangement in the form of a memorandum of understanding which is attached to the board letter. It's important to note that this MOU will have our district indemnifying the San Joaquin district because it is quite possible that this permit will be challenged as it will be a controversial permit. And I want to point out that we indemnify them because we are, bottom line, we're responsible for what's in that permit and we're responsible for how it's enforced. Of course, we would be responsible here in Ventura County for conducting the public participation elements of the permit process. Based on that, we're recommending that your board approve the attached memorandum of understanding and authorize me to sign it along with any other necessary documents to implement this permitting work. I just want to point out that I believe that this is good use of government resources. We're using a staff that's done this before. For the permittee, they're going to see more cost-effective permitting and more timely permitting than if we tried to do this on our own by hiring or trying to train someone to hire. So that's all I have.
It's nice that there are those resources out there that we can work with, and I know sometimes the county government will help other counties in the area and being able to provide services that we do, so it's nice that there's some out there that can help us with this. Are there any questions or comments on this one, or a motion?
Second.
A motion in a couple of seconds. Are there any objections to the motion? Not seeing any, then that also passes unanimously. And we'll go on to our next agenda item, which is number 11, and this is regarding the DMV fees and the electric vehicle charging stations.
Yeah, EV charging stations. Chair Parks, members of the board, Stan Cowan, Air Quality Engineer. Since 2011, Ventura County has been a lead agency on the Central Coast in supporting electric vehicle charging station infrastructure to encourage people to use and adopt electric vehicles. EV charging station grants are eligible for DMV funds because they are aimed at reducing motor vehicle emissions. This past January 2014, your board approved a grant to Ventura County GSA to install 2 level 2 charging stations at the government center here at a cost of $14,267. This grant would have paid just the equipment cost but not the installation. And since that time, in April, GSA received a different grant from the State Energy Commission, which would pay both the equipment and the installation cost. So basically, the purpose of this agenda item is to cancel the DMV grant and let them use the state funding, which covers more expenses, both the installation and the equipment. So this Energy Commission grant is an example of how the Central Coast has been instrumental in securing funding for additional charging stations in Ventura County and the Tri-Counties. Part of the grant covers a number of other county locations, including the Todd Road Jail, the Juvenile Justice Center, the Vanguard Building, the Telephone Road Building, East County Courthouse, the Camarillo Fire District Headquarters, and Williams Drive Building. In addition, Moore Park College and the City of Ventura were awarded grants for EV charging stations level 2 as well under this Energy Commission grant. So as a result, this frees up funding for additional work, additional charging stations, and we're requesting that your board authorize a new project for the Ventura County Office of Education facility in Camarillo. And the price of that grant for 2 charging stations at the equipment cost only is $14,054. And that will include wiring for future installations. This charging station will be able to charge up to 4 vehicles simultaneously, 4 hours for a complete recharge of a Volt hybrid electric, and up to 5 hours to charge a Leaf, which is a battery electric car. These are charge point stations, are networked. There is access either by keypad or credit card so that users can pay for the electricity. This request also includes approval of a grant agreement between the district and Ventura County Office of Education, and authorizing the APCO to sign the agreement as well. Also, we need at least 6 affirmative votes to be approved, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Yes, Mr. Morgan.
We keep giving these examples of Leaf and so on.
Yeah.
At the Fiesta we just had, they had a brand-new BMW that goes 124 miles to the charge,
All right.
and it is fast. I had to drive around the corner, oh my gosh, faster than my car. And that thing can go, and it's
Yeah.
it got a lot of attention. I think that you've got some more vehicles coming on line side, just leave.
Yeah.
They'll go further.
Right. The BMW is a great vehicle.
And
I'll
they're
just-
smart enough that they can be, different vehicles, makes can all be charged with the
Yeah.
same station.
Yeah, the level 2 is common charging protocol.
That's what I was going to ask. This is standard level 2 plug-in.
Yeah.
And I think even Tesla has an adapter for that. So,
Yes.
I'm sure it will. It's funny, as I was pulling in the parking lot today, I was thinking, I don't usually have to charge my Volt, but I would have today, and if we had one, it would be used right now.
Well, there's one currently over at the GSA building here. And actually in front of the district office, there's 3 stations.
Oh,
right now.
okay, good.
And
Good
they're
to
all,
know.
I think they're currently available, yeah.
Terrific.
What is the charge for Moore Park people using our?
They already paid for it, by the way.
Okay, so we have a request before us, and do we have a motion item on 11?
Move the approval.
Second.
We have and how nice that the county has a better grant, so they
Yeah.
can deny this one.
Right.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Are there any objections? Seeing none, then that passes unanimously also. We'll move on now to item 12, which is the memo of agreement with SEIU. And Tavine.
Good afternoon, Chair Parks, members of the board. Tavine Cosio, County Executive Office, Labor Relations staff. I'm here on behalf of the Air Pollution Control District with a recommendation for your board to commence or to hold a public hearing on the adoption of an amendment to the current 3-year memorandum of agreement between the district and SEIU Local 721. There is also a recommendation for your board to waive the second hearing that's required under the personal rules and regulations, and at the conclusion of today's hearing to adopt the proposed amendments. There is currently a 3-year agreement between the district and SEIU Local 721 that covers a period between September 10th, 2013 and August 9th, 2016. This is the contract that the county labor relations staff negotiated on behalf of the district. At that time, when the agreement was reached in June of 2013, SEIU was the first of the county unions to enter into a comprehensive agreement with the district and the county. And because of that, we had a reopener for some of the provisions in the contract in the event that the county were to negotiate something different from what SEIU had entered into and agreed to. So with that, the district and the county invited SEIU to the table to look at the reopener item with respect to the overtime provision. As a result of those reopener discussions, we have before you this recommendation for your board to adopt the amendments. Specifically, what the amendments do is it converts the 1% market-based adjustment that was going to be eligible for any employees who are negative 6% or more behind market, and now converts that to that market-based adjustment as long as they're not more than 10% above market. Therefore, broadens eligibility and makes many more employees eligible. Second, there is an MBA in the second year of the contract. We're converting that into a general salary increase applicable to all employees who are covered by SEIU 721. There was a proposed change, or there was an agreement to change the educational incentive from a cash payment to a deferred compensation contribution. We're rolling that back, and we're going to leave it as a cash payment to the employees. And then we are reworking the overtime provision. We still have overtime cost controls in this contract. We're discounting the rate at which we pay overtime for these employees. So we are maintaining the overtime provision, but just a little bit more enhanced, both for the employee and for the district itself. And then we are reducing the number of hours that APCD employees can bank into compensatory time off, hour for hour. Right now, if you work an hour overtime, you can bank 1.5 hours. We're changing that, so if you work 1 hour overtime, you bank 1 hour, and then you receive the half-time overtime premium as a cash payment. This will reduce the overtime need in the future. These amendments have been ratified by the SEIU membership. Similar amendment was put before the Board of Supervisors for the county employees. The Board of Supervisors has adopted these amendments, and therefore on behalf of the district, Mr. Villegas, I'm presenting them to your board today for a public hearing and recommendation for adoption at the conclusion. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Cosio. Any questions or recommendations?
Just for the benefit of the people here who aren't members of the Board of Supervisors, this basically we just have an agreement with our unions. If you settle with us early and we do something different that advantages some other union, during that same cycle, we try to go back and make sure we give that to you so that we don't disadvantage somebody and they all don't play a waiting game waiting to see what the other one's going to do. That's just this. We basically it gives us good. There's a good faith feeling at the table in terms of there's some trust out there, and we've done this across the board at the County Board of Supervisors level. It's the first time we're doing this here now at APCD.
Is that a motion?
So I'll move the recommended action.
Okay, we have a motion. Yeah, close it. No, there are no comment cards. I'll go ahead and close the public hearing. We have a motion and a second. And are there any objections to the motion?
Just to clarify, is the motion staff recommendations to waive the second reading?
That's right. All of staff's recommendations.
Not seeing any objections to the motion, we'll go ahead and call that unanimously approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is a study session, is it not? A study session regarding criteria use of emission reduction credits donated by iMation Corporation.
Yes, if we go back in time a little to the late 1990s, the district implemented what was called Project Excel at the iMation Camarillo plant in Camarillo. And what that did is basically it replaced the rule book and part of their permit with what was known as a covenant and a Title V permit, and it allowed them to operate and make changes at the facility without coming in to the district for the permit changes. It gave them operational flexibility, but in return, it also ended up, we had the advantage of enhanced environmental compliance. And there was an aside benefit. At that time, iMation also, to ensure that there was an air quality benefit, they donated 55 tons per year of reactive organic compound emission reduction credits to the district, and this was for an economic benefit. They also retired a large number of emission reduction credits to ensure an environmental benefit. The Economic Development Collaborative of Ventura County is responsible for making recommendations on how to use these emission reduction credits that are on deposit at the district's bank. And an ad hoc advisory committee was formed in the late 1990s to come up with criteria on how to use these credits. This criteria was actually approved by your board in 1998. And EDC-VC is to utilize this good company criteria to make a selection on companies to receive these emission reduction credits. I'd like to point out that your board has final approval over the final determination on who would utilize these credits. So it works a little bit like the Clean Air Fund, where the EDC-VC kind of in the role of the Clean Air Fund Advisory Committee. They make a recommendation. Your staff, we prepare the board package for you, and you would make the final determination. This is a community asset with significant value. These credits are in units of tons per year. Each unit allows a company to emit 1 ton of reactive organic compounds per year for the life of their project. These credits have a value, and I'm going a little bit on the low end here, of approximately $40,000 per ton per year. So with 55 tons per year, we're looking at a community asset of $2.2 million. What they committed to make sure that there would be additional air quality benefits is that the proceeds from the sale of those credits would actually be utilized for additional Clean Air Fund projects. And one example would be if a sale was made, your board made the final determination that Company X was going to receive those proceeds would actually, they could be deposited either with the district, or I would recommend the Ventura County Community Foundation's Clean Air Fund. And then we could utilize those funds for community-based emission reduction projects, so that we get another additional benefit in the future. Looking at the company criteria, they're numerous and some are challenging. First off, good community relations, as would be expected, and a good environmental record. We're obviously not looking for a company with a substantial number of notices of violations from the district. We're looking for a company that's implementing best environmental practices, which would be expected in this county, and they're proposing the best environmental practices for their new expansion project. And that would be required under the district's best available control technology under our permitting process, regardless. They're also looking for things that stretch a little. Is the company proposing to reduce vehicular emissions in addition to their stationary source emissions? For example, is the company going to be implementing a carpool incentive program, bus passes for employees, perhaps electric vehicle infrastructure for employees that utilize that type of transportation? This next slide has the two criteria, and I put them on a separate slide for a reason. They're the most challenging, I believe. And I think we may actually have to rethink these a bit, or possibly streamline. First, is they're looking for a company that is willing to curtail their emissions during smog season. And if you remember, our smog season runs March through October, which is a substantial amount of time, and I think it's going to be very challenging to find a company willing to curtail emissions during such a large portion of the year. The next one deals with the toxicity and reactivity of the compounds emitted by the proposed project under this new company would be emitting, compared to the compounds that IMATION used to emit in the past, under which those credits are based. When you look at toxicity, it's really not going to, there's not a scientific way to do it. If this new company was going to emit a compound that is slightly carcinogenic, and we're comparing it to a compound that had a penchant for causing birth defects, there's not a scientific way to weigh those two compounds. What I would propose instead is that the district's permitting process with our health risk assessment replace that criteria, because what we're going to ensure is that there's not any significant risk from the new project, regardless. Then reactivity. Reactivity is the potential for a compound to form smog. And the higher the reactivity, the faster at the rate that compound, that reactive organic compound, will create ozone. In the late 1990s, there was a lot of discussion about moving towards reactivity-based regulations, but it did not come to fruition anywhere in the United States or the world, for that matter, as far as I know, just because we've stuck with mass-based reactive organic compound rules just because reactivity gets so complicated and so cumbersome. So I think it's something that might need to be looked at again in this criteria. Looking more at the economic side now, would the project create a significant number of jobs? And I think when people put this together originally, they were thinking maybe one or two large projects, but I think we might actually see maybe a group of perhaps smaller projects. So we may have to scale that number of jobs down. But would the company also utilize people that have the training necessary in this county available? In other words, is there a high likelihood we'd be employed county residents? And of course, would there be measurable economic impacts for the county in a positive manner? And lastly, would there be other indirect multipliers? For example, with a manufacturing firm, if they were going to be purchasing supplies from a local supplier, obviously there would be a benefit to that local supplier that would not have occurred without the expansion. Lastly, does the company represent positive, sustainable growth for Ventura County? I asked some of my key permitting staff to review this criteria just on their own and then come back to me with what they thought it meant. And what they thought it meant when they came to me was the same thing I had read. We're looking at manufacturing type companies. We're not looking at oil and gas because of the sustainability and the significant number of jobs. When you look at the use of emission reduction credits at this point right now in Ventura County, it's heavily slanted towards oil and gas production because of the price of oil and the fact that there's a lot of drilling going on. So they're utilizing the credits. I don't think that these credits would be appropriately used by oil and gas production companies, but they most certainly would be used by a manufacturing firm. And the one that obviously comes to mind if we're just sitting around the table is Haas Automation. They're considering an expansion either locally or out of state. And when I step back and look at this, with the value of the credits, there's nothing in this agreement that says we have to sell them at the going market rate of $40,000, or we even had a recent trade, a significant trade of $70,000 per ton per year. I think you could, EDC-VC could decide that, yes, we could let these credits go at, 2/3 of market value or something to give that company an economic step up and an incentive to expand in our county. It'd still be offset 100% from an air quality standpoint. So I think there's a lot of potential for good from this. Project Excel was a great project. It's unfortunate we hooked our Project Excel to a company that made magnetic tape storage for computers, which went away in essence. But I still think the legacy can live on. I think we can achieve a significant environmental benefit for Ventura County while encouraging economic development in this county. What I'd like to do for my future steps is sit down with those stakeholders, most notably EDC, VC, and some of the environmental groups that were on the ad hoc advisory committee, to look at that good company criteria, especially the toxic issue, curtailing operations during the entire smog season, and see if we can't streamline that while we keep focused on the overall goals of Project Excel, and that's economic development and superior environmental performance. That's all I have. I'll be happy to take questions, but that's where we're at right now.
Thank you. Do you have questions, anyone? Supervisor
Michael,
Barbosa?
what kind of toxic materials was emission emitting at the time? Were they,
I know there was methyl ethyl ketone, and there's
in the plain English, what does that mean?
toluene, methyl ethyl ketone, tetrahydrofluoran, and methyl isobutyl ketone. So there were some toxicity, but there were no carcinogens in that.
Okay.
To give you an idea of how good IMATION's control system was, they were using substantial amounts of solvent in making this magnetic tape. When you looked at the risk driver from that facility, it was not the use of the solvents. Their control system was state-of-the-art. It was actually their fire water pump, the diesel engine that operated their fire water pump.
So the good company that we're looking for is going to have to be cleaner than that.
Well, that was an amazing control system, that solvent recovery unit.
Okay.
I have a couple of questions. Occasionally I'll have people contact my office wondering about how do you get credits and all that. Is there a way that we can expand the outreach so companies know about it?
I think that's something we're going to have to do.
Okay, I think so too.
EDC-VC.
Yes.
This is Bruce.
And then also, what does it look like, the balance sheet, if you will, from the credits that companies purchase versus the mitigations measures that we are able to achieve using the funds that we get for the credits? And if you don't have that information, can we have an idea on that? Because
We
our
probably
overall
can.
goal has to be reducing pollutants, and it may well be that it isn't, mitigated, right? It doesn't come out to be a wash. I would imagine we may be in a situation where there's still additional pollution occurring as a result of this. The money doesn't offset the
I'm not sure that the money generated from the sale of the credits will completely offset the credits, but you have to remember those credits are actually emission reductions. So they are in themselves, I mean, these emission credits are the gold standard of mitigation.
And I appreciate how long-lasting this is, too, because this occurred quite some time ago. What is the demand for these credits? Are they all being used?
Demand is getting tighter and tighter throughout California. I quoted you a price of $70,000 per ton. That was actually a sale. That was a service station purchased, a large service station. It was the Food for Less at the Esplanade is going to replace their entire operation and put in a large service station, much like a Costco. They purchased 8 tons of ROC at $70,000 per ton. That's our most recent trade.
But we don't have them sitting around and can't find buyers or anything like that.
Well, currently the oil companies hold the lion's share of the credits because what happened is when we started adopting our rules, they went out and immediately started removing their sumps from service, some of their engines, and electrifying, and they banked quite a few credits in the past, and a lot of them, the oil companies are getting to that point where they're nervous to actually sell them. Even though the bank looks quite good for the amount of credits we actually issue in Ventura County, it's getting hard to purchase them because people are getting reluctant to sell because the market's tightening.
And I took note at the beginning that iMation decided to retire some,
Yes.
and then also to, I guess, donate, as we're
Donate.
calling it. And if we are in a situation where the credits are actually still allowing for additional pollution because the funds that we get for the credits isn't mitigating that, do we have the option to retire them? I understand that there's a whole economic generator behind them, but if the outcome is more pollution, I'm just wondering at that possibility.
I'm not sure that that's what I have to go back and look at those agreements again. I don't think that was the intent, but I don't think it's prohibited either, offhand.
And that's where I wanted to kind of get to look at that balance sheet, that if we have that way of tracking it, I think that would be helpful. Is Councilman Tucker?
I'm not sure if this question applies, but I know in the past we've talked about how the federal government may be imposing additional regulations. Is that going to be able to tie into this with the credits and how that might work?
Well, the one thing about our emission offset rules are set at a level that are tight enough that the tighter air quality standards set by the federal government will not impact them. So that's a positive. The negative is they're actually set tighter than they actually have to be, but that's a bit of a story. If you want to hear it, I'll be happy to explain that one to you.
And Councilmember Ramirez?
Thank you, Mr. Villegas. It sounds pretty good. I have a couple of thoughts here on it, and I am wondering, is there still an opportunity to add to this list of potential committee members? Because I actually see a little bit of a deficit in terms of the environmental justice community.
Well, the committee was an ad hoc committee. They met twice in 1990s, late 1990s. So the committee's been disbanded.
It's been abandoned?
Disbanded.
Oh, disbanded. So what would be the opportunity for any other representative of a group to be included in this?
I think it's something, if you'd like us to talk to social justice advocates, we can certainly do that if we make any adjustments to the criteria.
Yeah. And I'm thinking of CAUSE, which is focused
Certainly.
on environmental justice issues. Additionally, there's Latino Town Hall in Santa Paula, also focused on that sort of thing. And there's a few other environmental groups. And I see Mr. Stensley here. I wonder if he would like to add something. He's come all this
He
way.
does have a card.
He does have a
we might
card.
wait for that.
Okay, we'll wait for that.
And then also, I would put in words for the East County too. I know folks out in Simi Valley experience a lot of pollution too, among other areas in the East County. So it is. That's where I was thinking, getting some outreach out there so companies know about it and able to see what we can do with those credits too.
Okay.
No other questions then? Let's go ahead. Mr. Stensley, would you like to come on?
Good afternoon, Chair Parks, members of the board. Bruce Stensley with the Economic Development Collaborative. I think I got 4 quick points if I could run through, and I think I'll hit some of the questions asked. First, of course, is thanks to you and your predecessors for the foresight in establishing this, and sorry we didn't get to it sooner. It took staff to do some pretty extraordinary archival and archaeological work to bring this up and bring it back to us. And not trying to be too funny, but who knew iMation would be producing benefits for us so long after they've left the region? But we're looking forward to working with you on that. A second point is just to affirm for you that I think while we are at EDC by no means a regulatory group of any kind, we are aligned wholly on this in the manner that we think of ourselves as promoters and stewards of quality life and a quality economy in Ventura County, and we define quality of life in a variety of ways. It's quality communities, it's quality air, it's quality education pipeline, and in this instance, it's an efficient and well thought out strategy to connect businesses to resources that both do good for the environment and do good for business, so we're looking forward to working with you on that. The third piece is we are definitely willing, ready, and able to work with you on the outreach, but 2 things on that point. One, the first would be in terms of outreach, we get involved with lots of firms in issues related to environmental efficiency. We work with, for example, the Cut Flower Growers Association in Ventura and Santa Barbara County and looking at logistics efficiencies in their transportation networks and trying to get product to market in a way that takes fewer trucks and that kind of thing. We work with manufacturers routinely at floor operations efficiency, looking for ways to make sure that they're using less electricity or power, et cetera. Even further afield, we've had conversations with the Lodging Association in the airports about trying to figure out how to bring commercial air service back here and get more cars off the road. Those, of course, are very different than what we're talking about here. We assume that while we would do outreach, we would be working very closely with staff to make sure that we are identifying firms that are known to APCD as having a need or a benefit from taking advantage of these kinds of credits and are looking at creating more jobs and meeting some of those other criteria in the economic side. Fourth and finally, just really want to affirm our commitment to working with staff and you on trying to take some of what may be anachronistic characteristics from this earlier developed criteria. By no means to reduce the rigor and the social justice dimensions of this, but to try to bring it up to a more contemporary standard so that we can put it into the community. And lastly, in relation to that, and just maybe I'm going out on a limb here, but I'll say it anyway, if we're looking at industry sectors that we'd be most interesting or most eager to engage with, it's the manufacturing companies that are still doing some production, but increasingly R&D, the highest wages in the region, and are still 30,000 jobs. We look at oil and gas, by contrast, it's 1,000 or maybe 1,100 jobs in Ventura County. So by just about nothing that we're going to do there is really going to improve the job market in a substantial way. But the manufacturing economy in Ventura County is huge, it's growing, it's sustaining, and we'd like to see if we can work with you to do it in a manner that's good for the environment and good for jobs. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
You have a question?
No, thank you, Mr. Stensley. I just want to say more generically, I think it's great. I just sometimes wonder about community relations criteria because it's been my experience. Community relations sometimes really is propaganda and not really real.
No comment.
So I'm sure you'll take that into consideration when you decide.
Indeed.
Thank you.
I think well, that's certainly a valid criteria in there. I think our role in this would be to try and find elements that have a little bit more empirical or objectively validated community investment input.
I know that some of the cities in the county give awards, like climate action awards, or to different companies, and that might be another area you may want to look in. I just really focus on this outreach. I think, for example, the county gave one to a company that makes non-toxic paint, or ones
right.
that don't give off fumes. And so just the idea of going out there, there's some entrepreneurs there, ways that we can use those funds that we get from the credits. I think that to me is, that kind of outreach would be wonderful.
And while that may fall into the public relations side, that's the kind we love. So promoting that kind of business opportunity
Right.
and value in Ventura County.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, that could almost be an award to companies, that we give out. But I just would like to see a much bigger outreach, because it does have some very positive benefits to the company. They're receiving funds, and we have some criteria, but I think doing some outreach will get more in that pool.
Madam Chair, this is probably a question for Mike and Bruce. You were talking initially that maybe we could sell some credits to Haas Automation, for example. We have, 50 credits or 50?
55 tons
55.
per year.
How many would Haas take, and how many are left over for? say,
That would be hard to say. Haas Automation, they do, since they're building machining equipment, they're mostly doing some solvent cleaning and some coating. And that's not real intensive on the use of credits from the emission standpoint, mostly because they have to have controls for those emissions.
Because they create a lot of good high-paying jobs. And under EDCVC, I know that we help quite a few businesses, Bruce, with the, I wonder maybe 1 unit or 2 units, I'm not sure, I'm just, that can be spread out amongst all those clean jobs or clean companies or good companies that we're looking for.
Yeah, I think it's going to be, what we're going to see if this comes to fruition is it's going to be a group of smaller projects than
Okay.
1 or 2 large projects.
Okay.
So there really is, two. There's the companies that want to buy the credits, and then there's what can we do with the funds from those credits. And
That's
the decision on what we can do with the funds for those credits, that's not with EDCVC. They just deal with the companies that want to buy the credits, right? And
ADC
helping
is looking to create more jobs. Go ahead, Bruce.
redo
I'd
those.
say we'd be happy to pitch in on that, but no, that's not our role as
Okay,
defined by.
and it would be good for us to have some ideas about how those funds can be used and get
Certainly.
input on that.
If they went to the Community Foundation Clean Air Fund, then the Clean Air Fund Advisory Committee would start looking at those type of.
And who oversees those funds then? The Community Foundation funds for clean air, their board makes decisions on where the funds go?
Actually, your board,
Oh, our
Air Pollution Control Board. Yeah, the Clean Air Fund Advisory Committee will make a recommendation that comes to your board for final approval.
Okay. Well, then maybe we'll talk about that later, but I like the idea of some kind of marketing splash where we're giving awards out and really, push the information that's out there and see what we can get from it. Because it has been kind of low-key as far as I understand it, because I haven't been that much aware of it, and I've been around here, so. Councilmember Morgan.
I like the idea of spreading around to different companies where they can use them. We've been visiting companies in Camarillo for a long time, about 4 months, 3 to 4 months. I had one this morning called Airborne. Every one of these companies are either in the air industry, missiles or airplanes. This morning, they make things for the C-130s. They do the nose cones. They do every piece of it. And so where they are around the world, they're certified by Lockheed Martin. I mean, they can buy anywhere they want to sell these things, and they're growing. And we've got several of them we visited like that are growing. One company built all the linkages in satellites, and it's growing. And so we've been through a lot of those, and a lot of those companies that we see that are doing that now, they need another warehouse somewhere just to warehouse things because it's growing that fast. We've got a lot of those kind of, what would you call that?
Aerospace.
Aerospace. Dear God, I couldn't get it out. This
So
Fiesta's killed me, guys.
And this is for credits that they could
Yes,
get
there's
by
way.
some of
Well,
those
they
credits.
manufacture too, but they're not heavy manufacturing, which is great. But it creates great jobs, and right now they're missing. They're trying to find people who can run what do you call that, machines and so on, because there's a real shortage of people wanting to go into that. So we hooked them up with Ventura College One. I said, Ventura colleges are teaching that now, and they're going to expand that program. And so these jobs can pay $100,000 a year. These machine jobs can. And so it's a great opportunity. But anyway, I didn't want to get into this, but we have a lot of companies locally might be able to use those, and you know about that.
That's right.
Well, this is a good study session. Anyone else have any comments for it? And then we'll, unless you have any final on that, we'll just go ahead and receive and file this study session and good information. I'll have a motion on that.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second to receive and file. Seeing no objections, consider it received and filed. And I guess at this point, we are ready to go into our closed session. Are we anticipating any announcement from closed session? No?
I don't
Okay,
anticipate
then we'll
one,
just
but
adjourn
Mike-
from closed session. Does that
Yeah,
sound good?
We can adjourn from closed session.
We can.
Yes.
We will.
Yes.
Yes. We are going to adjourn from closed session then, and our open session is adjourned.